Hey Jay, thanks for joining us today on YouTube Live to talk about making technology invisible to the users. How is your day going and how's your quarantine going so far?
So far, so good. I'm quarantined in lovely Pueblo, Colorado, where my son lives, and we get to wave at each other a lot and do social distancing walks and things like that. Pueblo is actually a very interesting and nice town with really interesting art and architecture. It's fun to walk around, and nobody's outside.
Well, I was driving through my neighborhood yesterday to go pick up some groceries, and there were tons of people outside. The weather in Austin has been wonderful, but I understand you guys got snow.
Yes, we did just a couple of days ago. And what was even more delightful was we were lucky that our Airbnb, the heater wasn't working, the furnace. So we not only had snow, but we had a nice brisk evenings until that got fixed. It got fixed just in time when the weather got warm.
So you can go ahead and unshare your screen, but I wanted to welcome you to YouTube, but you've been on YouTube quite a bit. You are a game show champion, including Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So if you want to take a second and tell us about that, that is just a fun fact about Jay Rosenberg that I absolutely love.
Oh, sure. I can take a couple of minutes. It's going back now, gosh, 12 years. But I've always enjoyed game shows, even when I was really little, and the only time they were on daytime television. So I'd sometimes pretend I was sick just so I could watch like Hollywood Squares, Jeopardy, all those types of fun shows. So it was always a bit of a dream to finally be able to go through the auditioning process and get through. And, having 10 kids is what they call a hook in the showbiz terminology of game shows and so forth. So that made me a interesting contestant, and I think that may have helped um, propel me on the way, as well as having participated in the annual O. Henry World Pun Championship. So I don't know, I can't promise any puns during this presentation, but don't be surprised if a few slip in here and there.
Well, everyone will be very disappointed. But if you want to go ahead and unshare this screen,
Sure.
we can go ahead and get started. So today you were talking about tips on making technology invisible. So we'll give it away to you.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. My name's Jay Rosenberg. I've been involved in technology development, application development, and mostly consulting of creating solutions and services for, I won't say how long, but a very long time. And in almost every industry that you could imagine. So it's been really enjoyable. And I want to actually go way back into something that occurred to me when I was putting myself through school. I worked as a telephone operator, and in case you don't know what they were, because now you don't almost, I can't remember, probably 20 years since I've spoken to a telephone operator. It was back in the days before cell phones and all of that. And you dialed your phones, and if you were lucky, you got the nifty ones that had push buttons. If you hit 0, a person came on the line and said, so and so, Mr. Rosenberg, may I help you? And I was one of those. And it was the cords that plugged into the walls, if you've ever seen those types of things in old movies or cartoons or whatever. And at the time, the phone company was trying to encourage people to self-dial, and they had a lot of, but people were used to calling the operator for any type of long-distance calls or long-distance services. So we would get a call, and it would come in and say, I want to make such and such type of call, and say, well, you can do that yourself, and you give them the dialing instructions, and you then say, now please hang up the phone for 5 to 10 seconds and follow our instructions. The reason was it was old mechanical switches, and it would take a few seconds for the lines to open up and disconnect. So if they hung up the phone and immediately picked it up, they'd still be connected to you, the operator. Well, of course, people would hang up and immediately pick up. And you would remind them, saying, yes, please hang up the phone, wait 5 to 10 seconds, and then follow the dialing instructions. And they would hang up and immediately pick up the phone yet again. So after the third or fourth time, you would say something along the lines of, place down the phone on the receiver, count out loud to 10, then pick up the phone and follow the instructions. Well, we would always have a big laugh amongst us operators of like, how stupid are these people? How hard is that to do? Hang up the phone, wait a couple of seconds, and then pick up. But fundamentally, we were wrong, because people who are making these calls are not thinking of switches and timing triggers and when lines connect and how their call gets through. They're thinking of who they're calling, why they're calling, what they want to say. You've already distracted them by having them try to figure out and memorize the dialing instructions. And they just want to get through to whoever they want to talk to. And forcing them to think about the technology of how a phone works and how connections are made is opposite of the goal of what they want to achieve. So they weren't stupid. They were just thinking about things that we weren't thinking about. Our job was thinking about those things all the time. That's not their job. So in my years of consulting, I took that lesson and said, when you develop solutions, when you develop technology, we like the technology. We think about the process. We think of all the things you have to do, all the exceptions, all the routes, all the pathways. The user doesn't think about that. The user should have the technology invisible to them. They should focus only upon what they want to do, why they're doing it, what they're trying to accomplish, and anything related to that, not the application that they're sitting on and why they have to click here first, or why they can't enter, maybe a zip code before they have to enter the state, or whatever the case may be, or why they have to open this file before they can do some other task. It's maybe not obvious to them. And even if it is obvious to them, it's not something they should be spending their brain power on. So the idea of this talk is to bring some of the ideas of how do you create invisible technology? What are the pitfalls that block it from? And sometimes it's very easy to miss those. For example, one of the common traps is using the process as something that they are assuming is going to happen. One of my favorite examples is in Windows, especially going back to Windows 95 and on forward, was to quit the program, you had to press the start button. And that was always a big joke. It's like, so I have to go to start to exit, because the logic behind that from the developers, I can only assume, was that every action has a start, a middle, and an end. So if you want to leave, you have to start to leave. Well, to a user, that makes no sense. I just want to leave. Why do I want to say I want to start to leave, right? So make sure that the process you're doing, if you're doing it for the technology, doesn't appear that way to the user, right? You want to use the right terms. You want to use that way that they're doing it. A second pitfall is, again, using phrases or ideas that you wouldn't normally use, such as, and we've all seen it, hit any key to continue. How often in life, in any interaction, do you do where you have to like stop somebody when you're talking with them and say, oh, you didn't tap your nose. I didn't know you were done and ready for me to start speaking, right? There's nothing about hit any key to continue that is about the process they're doing. It's forcing the user to focus on the technology. So you want to avoid having the user focus on the technology in accomplishing the task. If what they want to do next is to, for example, calculate some spreadsheet value or determine an interest rate or something along those lines, well, then just say, continue on with calculating the value. Keep them in the mindset of whatever process they're doing. The third term is nomenclature. understand the language of the process you're doing. When people work, again, when people do everyday tasks, they don't use terms like save, run, open, submit. Those are not terms that people normally do when they're actually doing real processes. Try to avoid them and try to do context specific, meaningful, descriptive terms that say exactly what they're going to be doing and not technology terms that are just so natural to us.
Yeah.
Next one is, and you may get the impression that, oh, you need to sort of handhold everybody. There's a big difference between a naive user and an experienced user. And hand-holding may be appropriate for somebody who's never used an application or is new to whatever process they're working on, but that can be awfully frustrating to somebody who's experienced it. If every time they did an action, you popped up and said, "Are you sure?" That could be really annoying. Yes, I'm sure. I know what I'm doing, type of thing. So have a way to either transition from a naive user to an experienced user. My favorite sort of example along those lines is if you've ever gone to, let's say, DMV or government agency or a receptionist at a doctor's office, and they're still using the 30-year-old PC app doing everything. That they zip through that thing. They hit XQC 712 473 because they know exactly what that means. What's happened is the nomenclature and the process has become part of their process. The technology has become invisible to them because they're not thinking of it as them. They're thinking of the process, and they've learned that. So there's nothing wrong with eventually the user becoming merged with that because they have, in essence, learned that aspect. The last thought on that is the old joke of what distinguishes a beginning computer user from an expert computer user. And that is the beginning computer user waits and pauses before they do something stupid.
Yep.
Where the expert just dives right in there. Okay. And then finally, understand what platforms people are going to be using it. Is it going to be across multi-platforms? Is it laptops? Is it tablets? Is it smartphones? Is it through telephone interactions? Is it a combination of somebody dealing with a user on a phone and they're dealing with the application you're building? Make sure that, don't take the attitude of, oh, this will make one size fit all always in all situations. Be sensitive to that. But always, again, focus on, is there anything I'm doing that I'm doing for the technology, or am I doing it for the solution for the user? And that's the major highlights.
The 5 things that you have to do is first, think like the user. So think like what their process is, what they're doing. Be aware of their expectations and how they interact. Keep your nomenclature context specific. Think about how many times they've been here and how they're interacting with the system, and then understand the platform that they are using this technology on.
Exactly. And I like to close with a thought experiment.
Yeah.
Whenever you develop an application, say, what if I took this application and put it in a different frame of reference, a different environment? So let's say I built an application that has to deal with multiple people, and each time they complete a task and they move on to the next, and they move on to the next, and so forth. Well, you may remember way back in the dark ages, people used to actually get together and go out to eat at a restaurant. And there was like an actual person who would show up and you would be sitting at the same table together. And that person would be responsible for just capturing what information you want in terms of what you want to eat. And so imagine your app in that environment and say, would that work? So for example, you sit down and the server says, what would you like? And you say, I'll have a hamburger. And the server says, are you sure? You go, yeah, I'm pretty sure I want a hamburger. And they go, okay. And then stands there. And you go, Oh, I think I'm supposed to fill in medium rare. Oh, okay, I got that. And then this person saying this says, what's next? I go, oh, didn't you see the little note there? Tap your fork on the table when I go to the next person, right? So they go to the next person, the person starts ordering, and the third person, they get to the fourth person, fourth person says, you know what, I'm gonna have a salad with Russian dressing. And that prompts you, the first person, to say, you know what, I want a salad with Russian dressing too. I forgot about that. Well, the only way you can intercede is if that fourth person says, you know what, go back to the third person. And that third person says, you know what, let's go back to the second person. Let's go back to the first person. Then you can do that. And then you say that. And, you know, maybe it lets you do that. Or maybe because you answered, yes, I'm sure I want my hamburger, it says you can't make any changes, right? And then, oh, okay, we'll let you make the changes, add the salad. Now we go back to the second person and says, okay, here's your entire order you told me. Is that still what you want? Do you want me to go on to the next, right? So if you imagine that type of process and scenario placed in a different frame of reference, and you say, that's really absurd. That's not how it should be working. You can use that as a guide to help you develop a solution and a process that makes more sense, that is more organic in the way of how people actually use it, without thinking about the process, without thinking about the technology, and actually concentrating on what they want to do, and hopefully have a much better experience, and you get the satisfaction of, wow, I have something out there that's working great and people love. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank
I hope this was useful.
It definitely
Thank
was.
you, Krista, for organizing this.
We have our head of user experience reaching out and saying on YouTube, that is user experience. So I love that you're thinking about the user experience, as you always do, especially with our clients. So you can catch us every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. here on YouTube. If you subscribe to our channel, you'll get an alert whenever we go live. You can also catch these live videos in our replay section. So make sure to check those out. Thanks, Jay, for joining us.
Well, thank you, everyone. And you have a great day and stay safe.
You too. Stay safe.
Okay. Bye-bye.